this joint meeting of the Board of Education and the Building Committee. Ms. Meeker, will you take the lead of the board? Why try to
Sorry to
fix
the
that?
folks at home.
It's an explosion. Okay. Ms. Boucher.
Here.
Ms. Campbell is absent. Mr. Cotton.
Here.
Ms. Hastings.
Here.
Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Mr. Richards.
Here.
Ms. Robinson.
Here.
Ms. Walsh.
Here.
And I am here. 8-1. We have a quorum if we need it.
Thank you. Our first order of business is a presentation from Amy Clark from the Department of Education on the finalized state building aid rules. Ms. Clark, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So hello, I actually don't, I can pull up a presentation and do it on the
It
fly.
could be a verbal
but I
presentation.
essentially am here to answer your questions. I can talk off the cuff about building aid, or do you want to just start with questions, or how can I?
Why don't you update us on what the rules are, just sort of a verbal
Sure.
few minutes. And then-
Sure. So again, for the record, my name is Amy Clark, and I'm with the Department of Education in the Bureau of School Facilities. And in last summer, last summer, the House Bill something or other had a change in the legislature to change the building aid rules. And so we just recently went through a rulemaking, and that was last adopted just a few weeks ago. And so some of the major changes in there, let me pull up, I think if I pull up a past presentation, I can give you a little bit more concise information. Let me just see. If I have one right above, because talking about the new building aid rules, a lot of them, I think it could be a whole hour presentation. So I just kind of want to skim through some, probably some of the more important updates that I think that you all may appreciate. Let's see. So the biggest change is that it's now an annual application process, and you all have already applied for the project. So all of the projects that were already ranked will take priority over whoever applies for the next project. So that will be, and the new application deadline is April of each year. And some changes have been made to like the space requirements. In the old regulations, there were specific space requirements saying you had to have a 900 square foot classroom. Now, essentially, it allows projects to do their designs as they wish, but it still caps the overall size of the building. So those size standards have also changed, but you'll find that there still are caps on the size of the building, so keep that in mind. But there's not so much prescription as to what those spaces have to be. That's true except for nurses' spaces, lab spaces, and there's kitchen and storage space requirements. But for general classrooms, gymnasium, auditorium sizes are not specified in regulation anymore. There are also eligibility changes. I don't think any of those, let me just look through them, much pertain to the your project, but there are minimum safety standards now that are required. So all school construction projects have to meet minimum safety standards, which I imagine most of those standards are probably already in your design, but you'd want to make sure that you look at those as well. Some small changes of things that are no longer eligible are like local permit fees are no longer eligible for building aid, so those all have to be covered locally. The building size spaces, so again, there in the old rules, there was a cap on the square footage for the overall size of the building. And that is true still in the new regulations, but the regulations have 3 new add-ons. So you have a add-on for special education spaces. So essentially you start with a baseline, like the building based on your design capacity, the number of students essentially in this building for design. There's a baseline, and then there's these 3 add-ons. One is for additional square footage for the number of special education students, an additional square footage for the concentration of poverty, which is based on free and reduced lunch, and an additional add-on for English language learners. And so you add on those and you get a different square footage than you might have had before. My guess is it will probably be slightly larger than what the old regulations had for you all. There are now, this probably is really important for you all, there are now new caps on all the different categories in the rules. The old rules had caps on just the construction costs. Now there are caps on all of the things that you submit for building aid. So site purchase and site development costs are capped at a certain percent. Some construction costs are still capped, and in a little different way, but construction costs are capped still. And then there's two other categories. One is administrative cost and contingency also have caps on them, and fees and services costs. So architect fees, engineering fees, owner's project manager fees, commissioning fees, all of those things fall into the fees and services category, and those also have a cap. And so you'll just want to look those over as well. And let's see, some application changes which should not pertain to you all. Some ranking changes which shouldn't pertain to you all. So there is a new process. If I'm able to, I could pull up a flow chart which might take you through the process if you'd like to look at this. It's also available online. But essentially there's this, once funding becomes available, the state will then offer an award letter to each, how much ever we have will offer an award letter to the school district. And at that time, there'll be 3 voting cycles, and if you all have already passed your your district's legislative body has already passed, so you'll actually have 12 months in order to get that project going. It's not really 12 months, it's June 30th from the 12 months after you get your award letter. So let's say that you got your award letter in the summer of 2025. Let's say that comes between August and December of 2025 would probably be most likely. Then you're gonna not have to have all your documentation due that June, but the June following. So it's 1 month, 1 year from the June 30th deadline that follows that. And that is probably easier to see on a flow chart, again, if you'd like me to.
If you can hit Windows K, you should be able to see boardroom, and then just click on it, and it should allow you to get on.
Do you have a Windows button?
I do, but I don't think I'm online. Like, I mean, I'm not on the network or anything.
Oh, you're not in the wire?
No, I'm just on my desktop.
Well, I'll let you talk, and I'll try to get you on.
Oh, awesome.
Amy, while he's helping you with that, could I have do you mind if I ask a clarifying
Not at
question?
all.
As far as the flow of giving out the dollars is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure folks know that there's been a lot of disagreement within the community about which location the school
Mm-hmm.
should go in. One of my concerns is if we about face or change course in any way, that might interrupt the ability for us to be eligible for state funding.
Yep.
Mainly because, my clarifying question is, upon receiving our funding, we have 1 whole year to be able to get you the paperwork that you require, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so.
1 full year plus some months.
Okay, okay.
To get paperwork or to start the project?
Yeah, is it like what kind of parameters need to be met in order for that money to be awarded to us? Like, do we need to be shovel ready in order to receive those dollars?
Yep, that's the criteria is outlined in the rules. You would want to look under, there's essentially what's called a GAN, a grant agreement notification, and that specifies the documentation that's needed for that. There might be like 8 or 10 items, but the things that are probably most important to you all would be like you have to be under agreement, like sign contract with somebody to do the work. You have to have all your funding in place. You have to have approval from the state fire marshal's office. They have, you're in the final plan. So essentially, you don't have to put a shovel in the ground, but you have all the documentation ready to do the work. All your permit fees, all your permits need to be in hand. All your permits need to be in hand that allow you to start construction.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, welcome. And again, that's in a scenario where, let me take you through the flow chart, 'cause
Okay.
I think that would be super helpful for everyone.
I think so too.
yeah.
I'm happy to talk about it. I guess I missed that part of this. So, I'm online here. So if you want to see this, this is just online. It's our school building aid web page. It's pointless to copy that URL down because it's ridiculously long. But if you throw Google in and NH Ed and school building aid, hopefully you'll come up with this page. On here, there's a presentation, which was the presentation I was kind of looking at to cheat a little bit and on the fly here. But this flow chart, I think, really helps people understand the school building aid process. So you all are kind of, I'm going to take you through this whole thing because I really do think it will be helpful and you can cut me off at any time because I do get a little chatty sometimes. But you are all, you're already through this process. You've applied, you've been ranked, and essentially this top box is where you're at now. First of all, the state, we depend on the state to appropriate funds for us to pass on to schools. There's no requirement that the state pass on funds, so I just want to make that clear. There could be no building aid, right? But let's assume that there is, and there has been since 2020. It's been coming, so since we were out of the moratorium. So essentially what's going to happen is we're going to get funds each year, and let's say that happens in July. We're going to then look at those top-ranked projects, and create these what are called intent to fund letters. It will specify all the details of your project, how much square footage we'll pay for, what all the parameters of all those caps are, and have a clear picture of what it is the state is offering. So that can come in December at the latest. For existing ranked projects like yourself, it could come earlier. The ranking doesn't happen until November. So for new projects that are being ranked, they won't hear from us till December, which is why that says December up there. But if we're working on an existing ranked list, which the law requires us to offer to the existing ranked list projects first, we're gonna take that top project and create an award letter, essentially, an intent to fund letter. Then the next box here is, are you an applicant that received one of those letters? Well, if you are, we're going to say in this scenario, the state has some funding for you all. We're going to say, yes, you were lucky enough to be at the top-ish area of the list and you got offered an award letter. Well, the district will then have 30 days to sign that letter. There are some reasons why you may not want to sign it. Well, you might not be ready to do a project, and you might not want to sign that letter. If the award was for the full amount that you are eligible for, and you reject the award, then you have to reapply in order to get aid. But if that award was a partial award, then you can reject it and stay on the ranked list. So if you're eligible for X million dollars, but we don't have that money to offer it to you, then you can actually say, no, we're not going to sign that letter. We're going to just sit on the list and you're going to be at the top the next year. So that might be one reason to not sign it. Of course, you have to consider inflation and all sorts of things, which I know that you are familiar with. But let's say you do sign that letter, then you're kind of, you're down here. So did you pass a vote? In your case, from what I understand, is that your district's legislative body, which I understand is your school board in Concord. If you have already approved that vote, then you'd go to yes. If this 32 months, it's almost 3 years. It's 3 voting cycles for most communities, because most communities are voting in March in the spring. So that gives 32 months gives 3 voting cycles for most municipalities that vote in March. And if, just for other folks that are not in Concord that are tuning in, if a municipality, the local community rejects that, then you actually get bumped off the list and you have to reapply in order. It's essentially, your community said no to you 3 times, then you're done. But if they say yes within that period of time, then you move to the next box. And this is that box I think somebody was just asking. And so by June 1st, 12 months following your voter approval, and after you get your intent to fund letter, of course, then you would have to submit this documentation. The rules do specify more clearly this this list. And for those of you who are about my age or older, I'm gonna read that list to you because you might not be able to actually read it up there. Or actually, well, look at that, look at that. So, so proof of voter approval, proof of funding sources, updated construction plans and specifications, a copy of a signed contract for construction, a letter from the state fire marshal's office approving that construction, and proof of DNCR. Those are the historical folks that have reviewed your project and say that you're all good to go, and any proof of local, state, federal permits necessary to start construction. So as long as you have that, you know, you have that documentation, you can then submit it. And then I think the rules give you 5 years to actually complete construction. There's a waiver process for that, but it's 5 years from the time that this is done. So you submit those things, great. If you don't, then you're bumped off the list and you have to reapply. This is the danger zone. Like, you don't want to be in here because then you have to apply, essentially. So, but if you do submit all of those things, then we create this GAN, this grant agreement notification that goes out to you, and construction can begin after that GAN is received. And then the bottom is just payments, when those payments come. 80% of the payment comes up front once it's signed, and then the final payment is issued once the project is complete and all the invoices are submitted and reviewed. And so, you know, if you don't, let's just say you don't, because you decide, you know, one scenario for you all might be that you don't sign the intent to fund letter because the state didn't have enough money. Maybe we only get 10 million funded, and that's not enough for you all to move forward, and you reject it and you say, no, we're not gonna take that 10 million. We're gonna sit and wait for next year. Then essentially the following spring, which is actually May 1st here, thought I could be better at this, but essentially the following spring, it's May 1st in the rules, you are required to submit some documentation, and you really just say, did your project substantially complete? There's a definition for that in the rule. If it did substantially change, then you get booted off the list. If it didn't substantially change, then you submit this stuff by May 1st. This is also the same documentation that you'll be required to submit this coming May 1st in order to stay on the ranked list. This, we'll talk about that in a second, but you'd submit some information to the department saying, hey, we want to stay on the ranked list, and then you stay on the ranked list. We collect more applications and rank those new applications, the new applications coming in, but again, you'll stay on the top of the list because you've already been ranked, and everybody gets ranked underneath. So it's a mechanism to actually just basically create a waiting list is what this process is like now. So that's the new building aid. Some good changes on our end. It's probably a little more challenging for those folks that were playing on one set of rules and then all of a sudden having to come in from another set. So I don't know if that is helpful or not.
Very, very helpful.
What is considered a substantial change?
I would, you'll definitely have to review the rules on that, but essentially a substantial change is similar to what it was before. It's when you are not, projects identify the deficiencies and you're required to fix those deficiencies. How you fix them is not always up to the Department of Education. And we use traffic as a great example for you all. You know, you have traffic issues at the middle school, and how you address them. You have to address them wherever it is that your new location goes. Wherever you all decide to put a school, those traffic issues need to be addressed because they were cited in the application as a deficiency, and it was cited that they would be corrected, and that's how the project was ranked. So if you don't change those traffic issues, that would be a substantial change. And so you'd really want to review your application of all the deficiencies that were claimed on the application and just make sure that all of those deficiencies are still being addressed in the new project. You know, you can't claim that you are unable to, you know, let's say you don't have a music program at your school and you'd like to bring music education and you're proposing to put on an addition to teach music. And then your next project has a lot of great changes, but it doesn't do anything to create a music space. That would be a substantial change.
Thank you. Other questions from board or building committee members? Ms. Robinson?
Yeah. Oh, Karen,
no,
you
that's
go
okay.
first. I've already asked.
Ms. Meeker?
I just had a quick question about, you had mentioned earlier that there's been changes to the square footage requirements for various rooms like gyms. Is auditoriums one of where the square footage requirements changed? Because I feel like in our discussions, we talked about, you know, the community wanted like a 900-seat auditorium, but we were sort of capped at 450 to receive aid. Is the square footage changes relevant to that discussion?
Yes and no, because I don't want it to be misleading. There are no longer any caps on auditorium spaces, for example, as well as any spaces except for the ones there. Lab spaces, you have to have so many square feet per student. Kitchen spaces have to be enough to provide enough time for students to eat lunch. Nurses' spaces have to be a certain size. Other than those spaces,
Those are minimums, though, not caps, right? Like you
oh
have-
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay,
Correct.
just
Yes.
wanted to
Yep,
clarify.
actually, that's a very good point. Those are minimums. So other than that, there's no now requirements, minimum or maximum spaces for individual spaces. So sure, you could provide a larger auditorium, but keep in mind that your overall building is capped. And my guess is that those caps are really tight. Most likely, any additional square footage you provide is going to be ineligible for building aid. Matter of fact, the auditorium, even with your current design, may also already be ineligible, all of it, because that building already might exceed the square footage. So getting a handle on how much square feet that is, certainly it's a relatively straightforward calculation if the school district knows their numbers of English language learners and special education students, number of, and free and reduced lunch rates.
And what point in time are you using for those numbers of students? Because that can obviously change from
Yeah.
year to year.
The rules will go through how to make those calculations. They're still pretty new for me, so I believe, don't hold me to this, but I believe it's like the average of the last 5 years.
Okay.
Those are the numbers that you use. Yeah.
Ms. Robinson?
Yeah, my question was, what do you find is the average amount of time it takes for a district our size to move through this process? It's different for every community.
Yeah.
No one is a monolith, but there must be some kind of average to how long this process takes a district this size, I would think.
There may be for size. I can say, I don't know the upper limits of that. I mean, we have schools that have been trying to get their local voters to approve and for many, many years. And then they just go back to a drawing board and it sits idle for a while and then the issues become really important. Can't ignore them anymore. So we certainly have projects like that. I really do also say, which probably doesn't apply to you all, but I do remind school districts that this is not a quick process, that schools are in planning for at least 1 to 2 years at a minimum of planning for school construction. I mean, I know that doesn't apply to you all because you guys have been in planning for quite some time, but it's more on the low, we more have conversations on that end to try to get schools to understand that they can't just decide they want to build a school and have a school built next year. We talk to the legislature a lot about that because it's planning. We can't just say, okay, we have money this year, apply, and we'll roll it out, and by December you can have a new school.
Right.
But if you're asking on the high end, it's really, really hard to say.
Yeah. Thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Other questions, building committee members? Oh, Ms. Meeker?
I just have to admit
My
something.
weird peripheral
It's okay.
vision tonight.
I don't actually know where we are on the list right now. I know we had placed 4th when we had put in the application, but I don't know what happened with the other projects, if they fell away which bumps us up, or are we sort of in limbo?
Yeah, I can confirm, but I bet somebody in this room already knows. I was thinking
No, I'm
that
like trying not to look at Jack,
too.
but
Yeah, so, yeah, it's all coming back to me now. Oh, yes, I'll just cross that out. Yeah, Rochester was funded, Colebrook is number 2, they were not funded, and, you all were number 3, does that sound right?
We're number 4, and
Oh,
it
you're
was
number 4.
Monadnock.
Monadnock was funded, thank you,
And
Jack.
so was Rochester, so that makes us.
Yeah, so
number
you're
2.
currently number 2 on the list. Colebrook is ahead of you. And all those schools that are on that ranked list are required, including Concord, are required to submit documentation by May 1st of 2025. And that is when we'll know whether Colebrook or anybody below Concord is moving forward with their project.
Do you know what year Colebrook is in its cycle? Because didn't they get an award last time?
They did not get an award
Oh,
last time
okay.
because their local community didn't pass their
Okay.
vote. Yeah.
Mr. Cotton, I think I saw, on the Mika.
sorry for more
And then
questions.
Mr.
Sure.
In terms of, because we're in this transition year where we're sort of grandfathered in, but new applicants will go to the bottom of a list, if I'm understanding this right. How many people are on that list total? And then if we were to fall off, do we then, let's say there's 40 on the list and we reapply, then we become 41st, right? And then all of those grandfathered in projects stay grandfathered in until they essentially say no or yes.
Correct. So, well, for the most part, correct, I think. So if you're looking for it, it's on this website again, and it's approved descending ranked order list, November 10th, 2022. On this list, which is where I probably would have gone, but Jack is correct. There's Monadnock, number 3. Monadnock was funded, Rochester was funded, so Colebrook is number 2, Concord is number 4. But will become number 2 because 2 were funded. This has a list of 17 projects on here. With that said, 3 of them were funded. So in that list will become 14 or less. It won't become any more than 14. But 14 schools are responsible for submitting documentation on May 1st, and we'll find out whether that list is 14 or less.
Got it. And I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I've been told that the average number of projects that get funded in any given year based on what the state allots is around 3 projects. Is that fair
Well,
to say?
3 this past biennium,
Yeah.
so 1.5 every year.
Right.
It's hard to, that's a true statement, except that building aid has been coming out of this moratorium. I mean, our first year of funding, I think we got maybe like $8 million or something, and it funded 2 small renovation projects. So it's not like you have a big picture of averages. The averages, you know, not only that, the old process was to submit by a biennium. And the first biennium, we didn't get a ton of projects because nobody actually knew we were coming out of a moratorium. The second biennium, applications were due in July of 2020. So we had January of 2020, there was a requirement to submit something to the department saying, hey, I'm gonna apply. At that January of 2020, we got 50 so applicants saying they were going to apply. By July of 2020, as you all know, schools
had
were
other
not,
things going
Things were
on.
happening.
schools were not concerned about filling out a building aid application. And so it's kind of, the ranked list has been through these really weird, so that was 2020, and then 2 years later of 2022, which is the list that you're looking at now. But as for funding, I don't know, funding is a big old roller coaster.
Mr. Richard, you had a
I had
question?
the same rank question, but I believe it's just a statement, I think Colebrook has not passed their vote the past 2 years, so if they were not to pass it again, then that means they would be removed off the list. Having read that?
No, only because this is a new process. You are correct, if this process were in place, but it's really starting from here on out. We've actually never offered Colebrook an award, so now what will happen is we will offer them, if they submit documentation on May 1st, they would be number 1 on the list. We will offer, if we get money, we will offer them an award, and they will then have 3 years, 3 voting cycles to get their award passed. No, we have to make the offer first, and we haven't done that yet.
Thanks.
Thank Mr. Richard?
So, and then, I'm sorry, I apologize if this is another hypothetical that you're gonna have to qualify all things because of that, but, so if we were to fall off the list and have to reapply, those other, say, 14 people are grandfathered in ahead, then you get so many applications and you rank them, do they go on the list, or if the ones who don't get any aid at that point have to apply again and get re-ranked each and every year that they come and they don't get it? Or do they get onto a more stable list?
I think what you're asking is that they get onto a more stable list, I think is the answer to what you're asking. Essentially, let's say all 14, May 1st comes and all 14 schools decide, but Concord doesn't. So now my list is 13. So Concord decides they're gonna reapply. Those 13 will be all ranked already. April 1st, also I'm taking new applications. Let's say I get 20 of those. I don't know because nobody's required to tell me, but let's just say I get 20 new applications. All of those are gonna then be ranked underneath the 13 that were just ranked. Then Concord would apply then, maybe, the following April. They certainly wouldn't be applying that April because why would they when they just decided then not to apply? So then there'll be another 20 applications that would get ranked and it will just keep continuing that. And all those people that were on that ranked application will all have an obligation to submit to the department the following May, saying, hey, we still want to be on the ranked list. Which you would think that a lot of schools would say, hey, I want to still be on the ranked list, but situations can change. First, schools may fall off this list because I think the most common reason will be because they just decided to build with local funds.
Right.
And they can't wait for state funding, they're more affluent communities or whatever, and they just decide to go. They'll fall off because we don't retro pay anything. So they've just built their school and they'll fall off the list. Other things is the school boards change, and you have to have the support of the school board to say, yes, we want to stay on the ranked list, and some communities will be like, no, we want to build a new school, but not that one. So they'll just maybe fall off for those reasons too.
Then they go back to the bottom, so
Well, they would reapply
they'd reapply. So you go
if they
back
chose to still build.
to a ranking behind the people who reapplied the year before?
Correct.
So you
It's
could just
not a
pick-
special thing just for this May 2022 list, or,
Okay.
I'm sorry, November 22 list. It will happen every year to anybody who was previously ranked. And so that list will continue to get longer and longer unless funding starts matching that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Hastings?
Just for clarification, because all these hypotheticals have my head swimming. Is it fair to say that should Concord fall off the number 2 spot that we will hope to be in May, that it would be very expensive for us to try to go back and get back on the list if we were really in need of building a new school?
Well, that's a question for you all. You can just ask your budget.
We would go to the
let me
bottom
just-
of the list and be maybe 14, 15 on a list of projects that 1.5 typically get funded a year.
Well, what I will say is you wouldn't be, we're really talking about, you would not be only on the bottom of that November 22 list, but you're gonna be at bottom of the additional applications that we take in April as well. And again, I don't know how many of those 14 will stay on the list.
But potentially.
But
quite
potentially could be
possibly some.
14, and I could potentially take in 1 application, or I could potentially take in 20. I mean, my guess is we'll probably take in at least 20 applications in April, but I don't have any data to support that. And inflation, there are inflation calculations out there, and you all can figure out whether that's worth it. And at some point, inflation will cross more expensive than aid.
Do you have a question?
So is the ranking based on when schools apply, or is it based on the need of the project, or both?
Somewhat both. So the applications will, just like in November, the November 2022 list that you all are on, you all were applied together, all 17 projects, and they were ranked based on a bunch of different criteria. Unsafe conditions, safety concerns, environmental concerns, traffic concerns, space needs, and so forth, a bunch of criteria. So that pool is ranked amongst each other.
Okay.
But then after that, your ranking will stay. Everybody else that gets ranked in April of 2025 will also get ranked amongst each other, but they will fall below regardless of the score of those applications above.
So do you revisit those rankings? Because each year my school gets older and falls more apart. So the need to me becomes greater. So does that get considered
It does
again?
not, no, we don't re-rank, we won't be re-ranking applications amongst the pool. The pool, you know, I might start with 14, and then the next time I've got 36, and the next time I have 50. We're not taking all 50 applications and re-ranking
So you'll
them.
have a, just to understand, you'll have a 2022 list, a 2025 list, and then a 27 list that might come after. that?
Well, we now, with the new law, we rank every year now. So we're
Okay.
taking applications, so, but I see what you're saying, because it
Yeah.
was before a biennium. So we'll continue on just stacking those applications.
And stacking those lists, so the
Yep.
22 people will come before the 25 people, who will come before the 26
Correct.
people. Thank you.
Correct. Yep.
Mr. Ricard?
So again, when we talk about this ranking, I know we're talking a lot about this, but right now we're number 2 on the list. So if number 1 approves their 1, we're still 2, but if 1, for whatever reason, is off the list, we would move up to number 1, we would remain unless we decided to be, ourselves to be removed from the list, correct?
Oh, not correct, but close. You also can be removed because we offered you money and you didn't take it.
Gotcha.
You didn't submit that documentation that was required in 12 months.
But if we followed our rules, we would move up, again, now we're number 2, we're gonna remain on number 2, no matter what, as long as we follow that process. correct?
Until we have funds, like those people ranked will continue to stay where they are until we offer an award letter. And then once we offer an award letter, you'll have to go. Essentially, the setup is really that you should be applying for building aid when you're ready. What the state doesn't want to happen is that you apply for building aid, but you're really not ready to build a building. And so then you offer an award letter and you're like, no, we're not ready, but now we will get ready. So that's not, we don't want to create a false list, so it's there for the folks that are ready to go.
Our place is saved, per se.
Yeah, right. And the legislature also thought it was important to say that the people on the list may have to wait, and if they're willing to wait, that means that they really need building aid in order to construct. So I do think that we'll see communities that are not necessarily dependent on it will potentially move forward because they won't be waiting because their projects do get more expensive every year.
Dana, did you have a question? Dana, did you?
Yeah, no. that-
Okay. Other questions? Well, thank you for joining us. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. I do want to give some caveats. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. The building aid, I know that I mentioned this, but I just feel more comfortable if I say it one more time. Building aid is not a given, so we have to wait to see if the legislature passes. The building aid rate that you all qualify for currently is 40%. Those rates are recalculated every year, can go up or down every November. And so once the award letter is issued, that rate will use whatever rate that you show up in November. Those are posted online under here as well, under reports, school building aid rates. You'll see that changes. Construction costs also will change in November as well. They are calculated a little bit differently than they used to be, which I think will be more helpful. And that 40%, it's important to remember that it's eligible project costs. It's not 40% of the project, but eligible project costs, and we cap the size of the building as well as now new caps, fees and services, all of the things are capped now. So with that, have I generated more questions?
I know. I mean, I have to assume that these rules changes seem significant, and so the expectation is that they don't happen often and that they will remain stable. So the but I mean, obviously statute changes, but I feel like, you know, within your administrative purview of setting rules, like the square footage requirements, that's not set in necessarily RSA, it's set by rule, right?
It is now. It
Yeah.
was in RSA before.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, these changes, you're right, are substantial, and they came from a substantial change in the law.
Right.
They were changed. Typically, trust me, we don't rule make unless we have to.
Right.
It's a long process. It took us a year to get this passed. But can they? And it was a good reason to laugh because the legislature could
Right.
drastically change again, making us have to go back to rulemaking.
Right.
But
Okay, thank you. I'm just thinking about square footage and auditorium size. I'm just, you know, like at what point in the process of the design or the construction do the rule changes, like, do we get grandfathered in for previous rules? Like,
Right,
are
right.
we building something?
yeah, I mean, there's some, I mean, I hate to use that word grandfather because it's not really a technical term in the rules, but the rules have changes to the application that Concord isn't subject to because they've already been ranked. There's a lot of changes in the rules that Concord won't have to do, so if you are thinking about reapplying, you also want to look at the new application process. There are some things that the projects on that ranked list do have to pertain to, the school safety standards and things like that. So the rules will define what things there are apply and what things don't.
Okay, I appreciate you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Yeah, this has been so helpful. Really
Look good.
appreciate your time and effort.
You're welcome.
And we will invite up HMFH to tell us that they've already addressed all of the new rule
Thank you.
changes.
They know all of it.
No pressure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A little worried.
And you know,
Yeah.
Amy's always willing to help out in
Yeah.
any way.
Oh, she's
and
wonderful.
come back and meet with you should other things change, so.
Thanks.
Yes, she did present to this board last summer as well,
She did.
after the last rounds of changes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, she didn't disconnect.
Try this one.
Yeah.
Close the little jet on it, sorry. You know what you got.
She might still be in the parking lot if we need
I
it.
think she is. She's having an unexpected conversation.
You have to disconnect when you use it, so somebody else can jump on to do it, that's.
Is it not connecting for you?
Is it not?
She is, she got a
Boardroom
costume.
display, yep, sorry.
Got it. I'll let her know.
We got it now.
Oh, you do?
Change and put your name.
Maybe.
It says connecting.
There you go.
Yay!
These are new agreements.
Okay. All right, so, we have a very brief presentation tonight. We were just gonna, sorry. We have a very brief presentation tonight. We were just gonna update you on where we are in the process right now and show you some revised plans. After the last meeting, I think there were some decisions made about the size of the auditorium. We targeted a 6,000 square foot reduction in the overall building size. So we have done both of those things, so we're pretty excited. We've gotten the gross square footage down to about 204 or 203 from 213. So we're down about a little over 10,000 gross square feet with the auditorium reduction and the 6,000 square foot reduction. So I'll walk you through the plans and we'll also look at the timeline briefly. So we are just beginning design development. So we're here in August 2024. our goal is to finish design development in January, and then Harvey will proceed with their next pricing exercise in January of 2025. The CD schedule here is sort of TBD. We're waiting to hear the update from the DOE about kind of the funding cycle, so we will be digging into this timeline and updating it to reflect the revisions to the funding cycle. So the first level plan, oh, sorry, this is cut off a little bit on the ground floor. But as I mentioned, we have reduced the gross square footage by a little over 10,000 square feet. We've done that mostly through just making the building a little bit more efficient. We reduced one of the stairs that we had. We were able to kind of reconfigure our egress paths, and we did we got rid of a second set of changing rooms that were on the second floor, but we have relocated the elevator, so they are now closer, the elevator is closer to the gym. So kids can use the elevator to get up to the gym from the lower level changing rooms. So I can walk you through this in a little more detail, but this is the smaller 450-seat theater. And then basically the revisions were all really up in this northwest corner of the building. We kind of reconfigured the multipurpose room location and the fitness room location and OTPT. So this is essentially all of the program that we had previously is here. It's just shifted around a little bit. The rest of the building has stayed pretty much the same. So the academic wing is identical to the previous plans that you've seen. The only change that we did make down here is we relocated a stair that was originally kind of on the, on the east side of the building here, and we moved it into the building a little bit more. Sorry about that. And that was what enabled us to eliminate one of the other egress stairs.
Where's the elevator now?
Oh, yeah, sorry. So one of the elevators is here. So we moved this one a little bit closer to the entry. And the elevator that used to be here, we pushed it a little further back. So we have one elevator here, and we have one elevator here. And they're still both very large. This elevator is an oversized elevator, and they're both, they both can accommodate a stretcher. So, and somebody in a wheelchair along with multiple companions.
One other issue that we had talked about and the board had addressed, in addition to the 6,000 square feet and the auditorium, was the ramp. And so, can you address that?
Yeah,
for them,
sure.
please?
So we have been refining the ramp, and we still probably have a little more work to do on the ramp. I can't say that it's working perfectly right now, but we moved it to the other side of the main street here. So we put it up against kind of the wall of the auditorium. So, we still have the ramp, so you sort of you start on the ramp here, and you would land sort of the top of the first ramp lands right here, and the stair also comes up here. So the ramp and the stair both meet on this landing, and then the stair continues up, and then the ramp continues up, heading back towards the front door and circles back one more time. So I can take you to the second floor, and you can see where you land. So on the stair, you land right here, and on the ramp, you land right here. So both start and terminate kind of within a few feet of one another. So the idea is that somebody with a disability isn't taking a different route than somebody who's going up the stairs. And the ramp is wide enough to accommodate somebody in a wheelchair along with a companion. So
And does the
it's a
ramp
good sized ramp.
Does it only go to the second floor?
It only goes to the second floor.
Is the ramp wide enough for two wheelchairs to pass each other?
It is, yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions? On Holly?
Let's see if there's anything else to show you up here. So, the media center has been reconfigured slightly, but again, the square footage is the same. And here is the third floor. So the art classrooms got slightly reconfigured, but again, they're the same size, so. I think that's really all we have to share with you tonight, were just these plan revisions, but you can feel free to ask questions.
Holly, this might not be a fair question, but if we've reduced to 203,000 square feet, have you looked apropos to the building aid, whether, what am I trying to say here?
Are we
That our-
within the cap?
Our square footage is within the cap, more or less?
We have not revisited that calculation, but even the previous, when we applied, we were over the cap. I think it was quite challenging. The district did indeed get a, what's the word I'm looking for? They submitted for additional square footage, and I
Yes, we
think we
did.
were
We did.
granted an
Right.
additional like 11 square feet per.
Right, it was
per
based
student.
on the population,
Right.
and the factors that she brought up tonight, special education, multi-language learners, and, free and reduced, so we were able to get additional square footage.
So with the new changes,
But I
that gives
don't
us
know how
credit for
that
that.
relates to the, what
So
the new
when do we
changes
think we
are.
will have the be able to calculate our square footage cap?
I'm
I'm looking over.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
we
It's
should
an
be able to
easy
do that,
calculation
both.
to do,
Yeah.
now that the data's
So
posted
if we
online.
could have that for our
Yep.
next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
helpful, thanks.
Yep.
I mean, we have 900 students and we're at, I think, 203 thousand gross square feet, 203,000.
What did she say about the number of students? So isn't that the question you asked about, like, was it like the last 5 years or something?
I was asking, what
they
year
average it.
for number of special education students? So she said it's an average of 5 years, so we should have.
So we can pick whatever number we want, we're not,
No, the average of the last 5 years. So, if we had 100 and 105 and 110 in one category, I assume we can figure it out from, or get a rough estimate.
And it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not like your actual number of students this year. They give you some sort of a upper buffer or something with that for growth and those things.
Oh, for the total number of
Total number of
yes.
students, yeah.
Right.
So the total number is always gonna be a little, somewhat higher than our
Yeah.
existing.
right, and that's what
Yeah.
they'll use. I mean, like, if, whatever our total number is, which may or may not be the 900, that's what they're gonna use in the calculation, correct? They're not gonna just arbitrarily use our 900, or will they?
No, they'll give us what I think, some sort of percentage over the actual number for.
Well, I think Holly or Tina had explained at a previous meeting that we had developed the 900 based on state standards for estimating how much to build a building.
Right,
for.
well, the 900 students came from the two demographic studies that the district had done. And in consultation with the city, we looked at projects that had been approved or permitted that were gonna add residences to the city of Concord. So that was how we developed the target population.
My question was, she had said there's extra space allotments for 3 categories, and I was trying to figure out, like, how do you decide how many of those students? Because it varies some years
Every day.
dramatically.
Every day.
Okay.
Take a 5-year
Oh,
average.
Ms. Hastings?
Go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah.
You said take a 5-year average.
Yes,
So
yes, yeah.
It shouldn't be a, you
So-
calculate what you had.
But
Yeah.
that's just for the bonus,
That's the
if
bonus.
I'm
Bonus,
understanding,
yeah.
that's the,
So
Above
you'll have
and-
those numbers for us at the next meeting.
yeah, yep,
Great.
yep.
Is the traffic study done?
We are working on the traffic study. They are trying to finalize the traffic study. It is in development, so yes, we are hoping to finalize that very soon, so.
And did it take into account, Mountain Road? Mountain Road?
It did not, no. The limits of the traffic study were established in consultation with the city. So our traffic planner, traffic engineer met with the city, and the city identified which intersections should be included in the traffic study. Mountain Road was not included. We did include all the way to the intersection of 393 and East Side Drive, and to the other, in the other direction, I don't recall off the top of my head, but that's all in the, I think that scoping document was posted on the district's website a while ago that outlined what intersections were gonna be studied as part of that, traffic study.
Okay. Good question.
Other questions? What do you expect that we'll be able to cover at our September meeting?
I'm
At
sorry.
our September meeting, what will we have?
What will we be talking about
Yeah.
in September? So our next steps in terms of developing the design, we do want to go back and meet with the educators. We typically go back to the educators at every phase, right? So we will go back, we'll look at the plans with the educators and, start, we might make some revisions based on those meetings and their sort of specific needs. So we're just continuing to refine the drawings. We're gonna start looking at massing and materials, so those are our next steps in design development.
And where are we on the geothermal studies?
Yeah, so our mechanical engineer is getting a proposal for the test well. So I think they had to go back to their subconsultant with a few questions. But we are hoping to get that scheduled for September, I think was the target. So they're a little bit out, but yes, we are working on that and should hopefully have that by the end of the week.
Other questions? Hearing none. For school board members, I have a motion I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything else on the agenda, to enter non-public session under 91A39, leak consideration of legal advice. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Richards. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Meeker?
Ms. Boucher?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Ms.
like
not here,
you.
sorry. I'm like, where is she? Mr. Cotton?
Yes.
Ms. Hastings?
Yes.
Ms. Higgins?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Walsh?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Right. I want to thank the building committee members for coming tonight and for all your work on this, and let you go home relatively early this evening.
But
We will see you soon, and
5-minute
we'll
break.
take like a 5-minute break so everybody can get going. And we will not be coming back on TV, just to adjourn.